Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you're doing great. Welcome back to another episode of my top 10 favorite and from what I believe are the best performances by some of the greatest actors of all time. I'm starting from 10 and then working my way up to number 1, and yes, indeed, I have seen every film of a particular actor, so these lists come from pure, passionate accuracy. I'm not kidding. Keep in mind, these lists are for artists who are no longer with us, sadly, so I won't be covering anyone who is still alive because I believe wholeheartedly their next performance could very well be their best. I hope so. Today I'm going to be talking about one of the most inspirational and coolest movie stars of all time, Paul Newman. Paul Newman is one of my favorite actors ever, period. He's had such an illustrious career, and he was always looking to challenge himself in every film he made. The man has so many hits to count. Of course, not every film is quite the best, but Newman always held his own. I always loved watching him react, behave, and just own the screen. He actually didn't start training for acting until he was in his mid-20s, which is wonderful. He was trained by the great teacher Lee Strasberg, so you know Newman was great at listening and body language. He just threw himself in each role, which, like myself, he was never really that naturally great at anything. Paul Newman said himself, "I had no natural gift to be anything. Not an athlete, not an actor, not a writer, not a director, not a painter of garden porches, not anything. So I've worked really hard because nothing ever came easily to me." Hard work beats talent when talent does not want to work hard, ladies and gentlemen. That's what makes him among the best. So let's go, man. Here are the top 10 best performances of the great Paul Newman. Starting off at number 10, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. One of the greatest Western crime comedies of all time, and yes, one of the greatest buddy movies ever. This was the first collaboration of Newman and Robert Redford, and they immediately became BFFs. The studio didn't even want Redford because he was too unknown, but when Steve McQueen dropped out at playing Butch Cassidy, Newman slid to the Butch part, and then convinced the studio to cast Redford as Sundance. They constantly played pranks on each other, but all in great fun. Of course, this tells the story of real-life outlaws Robert Leroy Parker and Harry Longabout, and their whole journey of crime and fun. Yes, this came out in 1969, where anti-heroes were at a great height, but we love it because of these two. Newman just soaks up all the fun, and quite honestly, both of them had the best lines. Who am I kidding? And because of the film, Newman named his charity for children with serious medical conditions Hole in the Wall Camp, after his own character's gang in the movie. Number 9, Absence of Malice. This film really surprised me when I first saw it. Not that I doubted it would be good, because you have Paul Newman and Sally Field going head to head practically, but I just wasn't expecting such an impact when it was done. Thanks to its wonderful Academy Award nominated screenplay and an Academy Award nominated performance for Best Actor for Paul Newman. It tells the story of a liquor warehouse owner, played by Newman, who is persecuted by a journalist, played by Sally Field, on an investigation of his involvement in a murder. Libel is the word of the day, of course, and Newman does everything he can to fight back against the press. Newman said he really enjoyed, quote-unquote, kicking the press's ass, because Newman himself had always been persecuted by the press, like any celebrity, right? But this movie is totally great, and I highly recommend it. Number 8, Nobody's Fool. Came out in 1994 and featuring Newman's 9th Academy Award nomination for Best Actor. He plays Sully, who is approaching retirement and is battling his employer, played by Bruce Willis, wonderfully by the way, for workers' compensation, but at the same time ends up taking up more odd jobs from him. More plot points develop as he pursues Bruce Willis' wife, played by Melanie Griffith, and tries to reconnect with his estranged son. This was based off the novel by Richard Russo, hence why all the other plot developments. But Paul Newman leads the story like the great star he truly was. The film is all character development, which is why Newman shines so well here. And if you ever see this one on the shelf or streaming, oh yes, get a nice cup of coffee and cozy up with this funny yet dramatically heartwarming performance. Number 7, Road to Perdition. This is a true personal favorite of mine. It stars Tom Hanks as a father on the run with his son from an Irish mafia family that he was part of, led by Paul Newman. The movie is led beautifully by Tom Hanks, but Paul Newman is just incredible, startling, and yet heartbreaking as a father and leader of a mob who wishes he had made different choices with his life. But he carries the business forward with a corrupt castle he built with practically the worst example of a son a father could have. I have a very special love for this film, as this was one of the many films my father and I saw in theaters together. This film is very much one of the best father and son movies, and I can remember my dad and I building a deeper connection with each other after this film. This was also Paul Newman's final Academy Award nominated performance for Best Supporting Actor, and it is such a dear, dear film I hold close to my heart. Number 6, Cool Hand Luke. One of the best classics of 1967, starring Newman as the man himself, Luke. Luke is a laid-back, carefree war veteran who is actually arrested for cutting off heads of parking meters in good old Florida. He's sentenced to a prison camp in the deep, hot South, and the battle with authority begins. What we got here is failure to communicate. I just had to, sorry. He escapes every time and is recaptured every time. But in no time, he develops a greater relationship and respect from his fellow inmates and from authority. I love the theme of Luke representing the Messiah. That is so damn good, as he comes an outsider but leaves them impacted. This movie is a perfect classic of the decade, and Newman leads it with such grace and simplicity. His character spoke to a community that is still very strong today. That's why it is so great to see many film students and today's average audience love this movie to this day. Newman earned his 4th Academy Award nomination for Best Actor here, and his performance is honored in almost every magazine and with the AFI among the best movie characters ever. I mean, how could it not, with that old Luke smile? Number 5, The Color of Money. I will mention right now, these next top 5 were extremely tough for me. Released in 1986, Paul Newman returns as Fast Eddie Felson in this film, which is technically a sequel to The Hustler, and Newman is at the top of his game in his only Academy Award winning performance for Best Actor. Many people say this film is not as good, and come on, I disagree. It chronicles Eddie Felson 25 years after the first film, retired from pool hustling, but still takes on bets and helps other hustlers. When he sees a young hustler and his shark of a girlfriend, played by Tom Cruise and Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, he decides to coach them, but then gets inspired to get back into playing himself. One of my favorite themes in film are comeback stories and old champions that are inspired to get themselves back into shape and become winners again. Sure, the pacing and structure of the film itself is technically not the best, but what do you think makes it worth watching? Duh! Paul Newman's amazing continuation of the character. This is 25 years later, and you can see the emptiness, the toughness, the bitterness, and yet the maturity and rebuilt strength that Newman gives Eddie, which made so much sense for him to win the Oscar. One of my favorite images is that last scene where Eddie grabs a cue, aims it towards the camera, towards us, and says, "I'm back." Boom, shoot. Freeze frame. So good. Number 4, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. Honest to God, my very first discovery of Paul Newman. I can remember watching it off of Turner Classic Movies, and I was just floored. I just kept saying, damn, that guy's good looking. But seriously, I was so inspired, and I said to myself, I can do that. I mean that in the most positive way, of course, where Newman's heartfelt performance as Brick touched me so much that I could tap into that place Newman took me and bring it to life myself. If you don't know the story, I'll sum it up shortly for you. Brick is an ex-all-star football player who injures himself badly, reliving his old days, and spends the majority of the film in a brace and crutches, drinking his life away over a certain someone in his life who committed suicide. At the same time, he is being pursued, but in his mind pressured by his family, including his wife Maggie, played brilliantly by Elizabeth Taylor, and his Big Daddy, played by Burl Ives. Like the great Tennessee Williams play it is, the truth and secrets come out, which was very controversial at the time, which is why it is very subtle and placed heavily as subtext. You need to see it to understand what I am talking about here. Newman's beautiful portrayal as Brick earned him his first Academy Award nomination for Best Actor, and in my opinion, it should be among the best to study for actors. Number 3, HUD. Once again, these top 5 were very, very hard for me, but this performance right here is flipping outstanding. Based on the novel Horsemen Pass By, about a family of cattle ranchers led by Melvin Douglas, who are experiencing a crisis in business, and at the heart of it is HUD Bannon, the son of Douglas, who lives an indolent, alcoholic, womanizing, selfish life after accidentally getting into a car crash that killed his brother. His actions threaten every member of his remaining family, including the family housekeeper, played by Patricia Neal in an Oscar-winning performance. This is another character study piece, not one you would want to pull out and watch on the holidays, but this is still a damn great ensemble piece, with Newman's performance being that bright and shining star. His character was originally written as supporting, but once Newman signed on, it was reshaped for his star power. Taking on this role was one of the best decisions Newman made for his career. And he chose to purposely play this role as a villain to stretch himself and strip his good guy image, because Paul Newman was very aware that he was becoming a heartthrob. But he wanted to make people think outside that and actually see him for the amazing actor that he is. What was incredible is how much his performance divided so many critics and audiences alike, and found themselves confused on who to root for in the film. And thus Newman joined the team of the anti-hero character, a main character who lacks heroic attributes or qualities, or performs moral actions out of selfish agendas. Newman just relished this role with such charm, wit, electricity, and intelligence, which earned him his 3rd Academy Award nomination for Best Actor, and it's one of the best performances you will see. I guarantee it. Number 2, The Verdict. Acclaimed by so many critics and fellow actors as well as the greatest piece of work from Paul Newman, period. This absolutely is an engaging performance from Newman, and another Academy Award nominated performance for Best Actor. Written by one of my favorite writers ever, David Mamet. I'll be honest, this film didn't grab me at first, but years later, after working for so long, I viewed it again and I was mesmerized by Paul Newman's presence, his commitment, and honesty in the role of Frank Galvin, an alcoholic, washed up, pinball-playing Boston lawyer who gets another chance to settle a case, but chooses to take the case to trial, risking absolutely everything. But in doing so, he really just hopes to redeem himself. There are just so many nuanced and detailed actions from Newman in this picture that just touch me in a way that makes me just believe him much more deeply. To where I forgot about Butch Cassidy Paul Newman. I forgot about Cool Hand Luke Paul Newman. And I just saw this man struggling and fighting to actually do something right. Such as the phone conversation where the businessman hangs up on the end and Paul Newman keeps talking to give it a proper closure, to make it seem like to his partner in the room that he is not being made a fool of. It's one of the best and honest moments I've ever seen of him. His performance is ranked everywhere among the best performances given, period, and I really hope you take time to watch Newman deliver some of the best moments he's ever had in film. Here are just a couple of honorable mentions. Slapshot, one of the best sports movies ever, which is one of the craziest comedies ever, as Newman plays a belligerent hockey coach leading his team to victory, causing such controversy with the crowds. I mean, what's wrong with just going on the ice rink and beating the crap out of your opponents? I'm kidding, of course, but funny enough, Paul Newman said that this film was the most fun he ever had making. And it's clear to see why. Somebody up there likes me. Due to the unfortunate death of James Dean, who was signed on to play the lead role, Paul Newman was the next star to step in. And it is without a doubt a knockout breakthrough performance for Paul Newman. The Sting, another genius in classic Newman and Redford pairing, playing two grifters looking to pull off the ultimate con against a crazy Robert Shaw. Indeed, this is another classic case of Newman being Mr. Cool, and he certainly is, through and through. And with Redford at his side, the star power shines even brighter. The Long Hot Summer, based on the novel by William Faulkner, Newman plays Ben Quick, a vagabond who has quite the fiery past, but he's looking to start fresh, pursuing the daughter of a civic leader, played by Orson Welles. This is my favorite movie of the 10 movies Paul Newman and his wife Joanne Woodward did together. They just had such beautiful, beautiful chemistry together. Sweet Bird of Youth, another classic adaptation of Tennessee Williams' play, which Paul Newman originated this role of Chance Wayne on Broadway. No one can say Paul Newman was not a good stage actor. His performance as Chance is something to marvel at, as he also is quite the anti-hero. He uses a fading movie star to hopefully build a good movie career, but comes back to his hometown to take care of past sexual business. Geraldine Page really steals the show, but Paul Newman was just spot on in one of his more underrated performances. Number 1. Yes, sir. The Hustler. The first film of Fast Eddie Felson, a small-time pool hustler who strives to break into the major leagues of pool. But in order to propel his journey of stardom, he has to go up against the best players there are. Like Minnesota Fats, played with such quiet confidence and stride by Jackie Gleason. This film has been acknowledged everywhere as culturally significant and aesthetic because of its dark and gut-punching themes at the time it came out in 1961. There are very few films at that time that really broke down the one-on-one contest and challenge with such rigor, patience, and focus. Like the whole sequence of the first pool game between Paul Newman and Jackie Gleason. As a director standpoint, it is just visually masterful, but the performance, particularly by Paul Newman, is just electrifying, unbelievably electrifying. At the heart of it, obviously, you have the charming Paul Newman exploding the screen with raw energy, but surprisingly enough, Paul Newman hated his performance in this movie. It's the overly critical side of actors, as I'm sure you all are aware, but little did he know he would wow audiences and critics alike with another Academy Award nominated performance for Best Actor. His arc of a raw, cocky, young hustler going through personal tragedy and pushing forward to become a champion is something to treasure for years to come. There are so many things to admire about Paul Newman, not just for his acting and directing, which, of his 6 directorial efforts, you need to watch Rachel. It is indeed his best. He was nominated also for an Academy Award for Best Picture for Rachel. But it's his humanitarian work as being one of the most admirable things about him, which he actually received the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Oscar for his contribution on top of another honorary governor's Oscar for his work. He has earned massive respect for his company, Newman's Own, which, you're damn right I have my Newman's Own ranch dressing in the fridge. Who do you think I am? But among all of that, I admire greatly his marriage of 50 years to actress Joanne Woodward. That's going to be a common theme for me because having a great marriage is one of the most important things in my life, and I am always just touched when there are couples in Hollywood or in the performing arts that get married and stay married. And I thank God for artists like Paul Newman, a fellow Capricorn, hey, I may say, because he helped inspire me in the very early stages of pursuing acting, and I will never, ever forget him. So that's a wrap, ladies and gentlemen. You gotta tell me, did I miss anything? Do you agree with my list? What are some of your favorite performances by this incredible artist? Please share in your comments below. I love to hear your comments, whether positive or negative. If you like this, please click like. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you can stay updated with more to come. And as always, thank you all so much for watching, and remember, keep the classics alive.